Hi everyone, thank you for coming here. There are three types of people on this planet. People who make things happen, people who watch things happen, and people who wonder what happened. Arvin is one of the kind of people who make things happen. He's an entrepreneur, and he's a libertarian political activist. With no more ado, we give him thanks for coming and speaking to us.
Thank you for that introduction. Is it cool? Can you guys hear me if I talk without the microphone, or if I'm here, you guys can hear me all right? I'm going to talk about a few things today, and then we're going to play a little game, and I'm going to pre-introduce the game right now. It's a game developed by the Libertarian Party's current executive director, Carla Howell, who herself was probably one of the best candidates the Libertarian Party has ever had in like our 40-year history. And we've been using this for the LNC, which I currently serve on, for our candidates. And I think that you guys will get a kick out of it, and it also really meshes well with what I'm going to be talking about today. I'd like to start by talking about this prop that I brought, this bottle of spring water. This bottle of spring water costs maybe $1. I don't actually remember. Let's say it costs $1. But that doesn't mean that the value of this spring water is $1. The value of this spring water is infinity. Because without water, if I don't have water, I'm going to die. You see what I'm saying? So I will spend all the money that I've ever had, all the money I can borrow, all the money in the entire universe to get water. But I don't. Because that's not how pricing is done. Pricing has nothing to do with the value of the underlying commodity. Pricing is done by looking at the difference between that commodity and the next closest replacement. So when I say that this bottle of water costs $1 and I'm willing to pay it, that means I'm willing to pay this for this $1, that this is worth $1 more than the free alternative, which is to go to a drinking fountain or tap or whatever. The biggest mistake that we have in education right now is trying to conflate price and value. Trying to suggest that because something is valuable, and education absolutely is valuable, that it's therefore the way that we should price it is entirely based on the value. That to me is making the mistake of charging infinity dollars for this bottle of water. In any one of you guys' science textbooks, every sentence in there was something that it took, some brilliant scientist an entire lifetime to discover. And yet that textbook, we're only going to pay $60 or so, or nowadays, $120. We're going to talk about why that is, just for that compressed bit of knowledge. I want to start talking about the pricing of college right now. I mean, right now, we know that college is overpriced. And this is not like a libertarian thing. It's not a conservative thing. I mean, Joe Biden has talked about this. Ronald Reagan's former Secretary of Education. Pretty much everybody in the world is now in agreement that college education costs way more than it reasonably should. But I don't think that we really appreciate how much more it costs. At a school like GW, which costs what? What do you guys pay? Like $45,000 a year if there's no aid?
There's no aid. Can be up to $60,000 a year.
Up to $60,000. And so what does that come to? If you make that a per hour thing, what does it come to? Like 110 or something like that? $110 an hour? In that range? $110 an hour. That means if you have, say, how big is a big lecture class here?
300.
Like 300. So in that situation, GW is taking in $30,000 an hour. I mean, that's out of control, and that's not how much anything costs in the free market. That's not how much anything costs anywhere in the universe. And that's the range of what Bill Clinton's speaking fees would be. I mean, and with full respect to you guys professors, most of you guys professors don't have the star power of someone like Bill Clinton. Now, of course, I disagree with him on many things, but no one can argue that he's not famous or that he doesn't command high speaking fees. So the college is taking in $30,000 an hour for 300 people in a class. And that's something that people are saving money for their entire life. In fact, if you look at financial aid, right now in America, 66% of people need to have some kind of financial aid. That is bizarre. I mean, 66% of people aren't on welfare and food stamps. The fact that 66% of people, that college has gotten so astronomically priced, that now 66% of people need to have some kind of aid, whether it's loans or grant, indicates that it's been priced miles out of the market. So one of the things I want to talk about is how that happened. I want to talk about the negative consequences of that aside from the obvious financial ones. I want to talk about what we can do about that, and finally want to close by having you guys in a bit more of a participatory fashion kind of explore some of these ideas. The first question is why is college education become so expensive? And the simplest reason, and in this room I assume most of you guys already know, is that it's expensive because it can be expensive. Because every single person in the country can get a guaranteed loan to study anything they want for 4 years. And the higher those loan limits and the higher those grant limits are, the more of an incentive every college has to raise prices. The president of Murray State, which is a college that has actually worked hard to keep its prices down, has been very critical of other universities that, not even of the universities, sorry, of the policies that encourage other universities to raise their prices. Because right now it's like the more you raise your price, the more money you get from the government. So it's like we've created this completely backwards incentive system right now, and it's really driven by some of those loans and grants. That to me is I think, fairly obvious in this group, and I don't want to belabor that too much. I want to talk about some of the just deeper effects that a program like that has. One of the effects is the way in which college has to be presented because of that. You see, if you're going to be thinking practically, you're going to have to sell a practical product. If you're going to be charging people like an upfront amount, they're going to be very careful about the way in which they spend. If different colleges charge vastly different prices instead of basically one universal price that's roughly based on how much the government's willing to subsidize, you're going to start to look at things in terms of a cost-benefit way. But we don't have any reason to do that because everything basically costs the same, and whatever you want to charge, pay, you're going to get either a loan or a grant to pay that. Working on, one of the things that I've had the opportunity to do while working on the LNC is work on the Libertarian Party's social media outreach. And I spent several months trying to find the right quote. I was like, somewhere in the world, Obama has said that he has no intention of ending the war on drugs. And I looked everywhere. I spent just an embarrassing amount of time on YouTube going through videos. And I found things that his representatives had said, like his press secretary, but I couldn't find anything official from him anywhere. I was like, that's smart, but there's got to be something. And then one of the newest people that we kind of recruited to join our social media team found it, and he found it in the last place that I would have thought to look, which was on whitehouse.gov. It says it right there, just very clear that the President Obama has no intention of ending the war on drugs or legalizing any kind of drug. And in the same way, when we want to look at what's going on with colleges, we don't really need to look super, super deeply or to find some very unusual location. They're telling us exactly what they're selling. They're telling us in their marketing. They're announcing it from the rooftops. They're telling us on media and all their brochures. And they're saying exactly what they're selling. And it's not what they should be selling, but it's definitely what they are selling. What do they say in the brochures? They say this is the best education money can buy. Is that what colleges say? Or you go through this process and you will become smarter? I mean, I've never heard that in a college brochure. What is this saying? You guys know what I'm talking about, right?
Diversity.
Diversity, that's one of the things they sell, but what they say college is they say that college is the best 4 years of your life. That is not an appropriate advertisement for education. A good education, realistically, as an educator, I would say it's probably going to be the worst 4 years of your life. But a really good, the best 4 years of your life, that's vacation advertisement. That's what you say when you want to, this is going to be the best week of your life or the greatest experience of your life. They're telling you right there that selling education is kind of drifted away from their primary focus. Best 4 years of your life, on one level, means that this is basically going to be some sort of a vacation. And on a second level, it also kind of implies that whatever it is that the college was trying to do, it has failed to do. If it doesn't get better than this, if your life is a downhill slide after college, your college education is obviously not really the best thing that you could possibly have. So that's one little thing that they like to say. Talking about diversity, the way in which they sell diversity is very interesting, because what they sell is kind of a silk thin, sort of racially only diversity, but along with that very thin racial diversity, there's a complete lack of real diversity of ideas on the part that the college should actually be concerned with, in my opinion, would be the professors and faculty. Washington Post actually did a study recently where they looked at the various elite colleges around the country, and they found that about 87% of elite college professors considered themselves to be liberal, and only 13% identified themselves as conservative. Obviously, in the way the questions were worded, libertarian wasn't even mentioned over there. That to me is like a sign that's not just saying like, look, they're brainwashing people. It's something much more subtle than that. It's really saying that the process has become more concerned with appearance than with the actual thing underneath it. I'd like to have you guys do a thought experiment to really illustrate what I'm talking about. Let's say you have a person that has studied, say, 3 years and 9 months of economics in a university, say this university. And then midway through his last semester, he dropped out. Then after that, he read 50 econ books. He spent 900 hours, getting one-on-one tutoring with economics professors from all over the world. And yet, despite that, despite the fact that he has like that kind of superior knowledge, like all of us have this like gut feeling that he's still missing that degree. He doesn't have it. And some part of us, like it's like an itch. He's like, why doesn't he have it? He should have it. It's not official until he has it. Like that right over there is a sign of how deep that brainwashing has gotten. To the fact that the purely symbolic thing to us, even in a experiment where we've completely separated the whole process, still carries that kind of weight. It tells me that the process of education has gone from helping us deeply analyze assumptions to almost impregnating us with those assumptions. One of the things that when I applied to Brown, I went to Brown to study math over there. One of the things that they used to say to us in in our orientation was, "You're going to learn more here from each other than you will from your professors." Which, when I first heard that, I thought that sounds unbelievable. That's amazing. Until I soon realized that the students were just winning that battle by default. That it wasn't necessarily that the students were so amazing, and many of them were very amazing, but it's also that some of the professors were really just that bad. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of you guys have had that experience, that you're paying, it's not just that you're paying a lot. You're paying, as one of the LNC members, Michael Cloud, would say, you're paying champagne prices for beer. And that is, the fact that you're doing it, and the fact that all of us have done it, really to me indicates just how much mental oppression we've kind of gone through. There are a lot of people who are fighting it right now. One of the most notable people who's fighting this whole process is the founder of PayPal, Peter Thiel. Many of you guys saw him if you were involved in Students for Liberty a couple of years ago. You got to see him speak at the International Students for Liberty Conference. And he's actually started a scholarship. How many of you guys know about his scholarship?
I think it's 20 under 20, maybe?
Yes, it's that same thing. And the scholarship is basically $50,000 a year, 2 years, to not go to college. Here's a person who graduated from Stanford, one of the most successful people on earth today, financially speaking. And he's so convinced that his success was despite college, not because of it, that he's actually working hard to encourage people to view things in a totally, completely different way. Now, one of the things that's really important in education, and this is really the focus of what I myself do in education, is thinking about something called the selection effect and something called the treatment effect. And if you want to think about the selection effect, it's like a modeling agency. It's like, a modeling agency doesn't make somebody attractive, it just finds somebody who already is attractive and represents him or her. The treatment effect is like a doctor. A doctor doesn't find well people, he finds sick people and transforms them into being well, or at least that's the way that the theory goes. The question is, it's blatantly obvious which one of those is better. I mean, everybody on earth would agree that the treatment effect is the superior form of education. But the question is, which one really happens in universities? And obviously it's going to be a little of both. But the question is, which one's emphasized? I mean, what do great colleges call themselves? I mean, they call themselves selective. They're like, this is a highly selective university. And in doing that, they're, again, basically selling pure image and brand at the expense of any kind of real value. you can see this. I mean, for example, I would say that the Four Seasons Hotel, while expensive, is something that provides something for the money that you're paying. And one of the things that leads to is that there's many branches of the Four Seasons Hotel. There's a Four Seasons Hotel in every major city in the world, or in many of the major cities in the world. On the other side, when you look at universities that are successful, they don't expand. Because if they expanded, they would not be able to sell the exclusivity, which is essentially all they're selling. If Harvard, which is obviously the most famous college in the world, had a business plan or had an education methodology that really was that good, it would make sense for that university to expand. I mean, somebody might argue that they might have a hard time, getting enough teachers, but based on the fact that they already have plenty of grad students teaching their classes, and that every professor in the world is, looking for a Harvard teaching job, that argument to me doesn't hold any kind of water at all. So we've kind of argued that college is maybe not that good, but I want to take it one step further. And I want to relate a personal experience that really shows me in many ways that college is maybe not just neutral and bad. It's not like, as we were discussing before, it's not like the Cambodian government which just takes your money and then does nothing. It's more like the American government, which takes your money and then actually uses it to hurt you with. So when a few years ago at my first Students for Liberty event, they were handing out books, and I think many of you guys have seen this book, and it's the Bastiat book, the one that has a broken window fallacy in it. On the front it says, like, what your professors won't teach you. You know what I'm talking about? All right, so I got this book, and I didn't read it. And it's not a very big book. It's pretty small. And it just sat on my desk right there for like a year. And it says right there what your professors won't teach you, and I didn't even open it. Now here's the thing. If I'd been in 10th grade, I would have read it in a second. 11th grade, again. 12th grade, I would have read it. Even freshman year of college, I probably would have read it. By senior year of college, I wouldn't have, and here's why. Because I had an econ major, I had gone to an Ivy League university, I had an econ major, and I was 100% convinced that even if I didn't know some of the advanced, econometric modelings that well, I knew the basics of econ as well as I ever would need to. So by creating this overconfidence, it had actually blockaded the kind of intellectual inquiry that college should be encouraging. I have a name for that. I like to call that diseducation. And diseducation is not the same as uneducation. Because if you're uneducated, you know you're uneducated, and you might take steps to fix that. Diseducated is the illusion of education. It's much more dangerous because if you're diseducated, you're not going to take that next step. So now the question is, how can we possibly turn this around? What's it going to take to turn this around? And it's not that simple because there are two parts of this. You guys studied Immanuel Kant, right? You guys know, like, the great moral and other type of philosopher. He talked about that there's two of the most heinous things you can do to somebody are deception and coercion, right? And we have a little bit of both going on right now in our college situation. On one side, we have the deception side, and the deception side basically tells us you have to go to college in order to be successful. We accept this despite the amazing counter-evidence that's everywhere around us. We have the most striking evidence, like Bill Gates, the founders of like basically every tech thing in the world, ranging from Facebook to probably everything else in the universe. We have, like, sort of maybe quite not as famous, we have plenty of tech entrepreneurs that either didn't go to college or didn't complete college, or did complete college and have told the entire world that they think it's a waste of time. We have things like MIT OpenCourseWare, which is basically all the education you would get at a very rigorous school, basically available for free. We have all these different options, and yet most people, not only are they unwilling to leave college and try those things out even for a semester, but they are also unwilling to do those in addition. The thing that I hear most often from students when I talk about this, or people who are considering college, they always say the same thing. They say, if somebody wasn't making me study this, I would never do it. In other words, that if they weren't being forced to study it, they would never study it on their own. That, to me, is like the most perfect in a really bad way explanation of what's happening. I mean, it means that our education system has essentially, from literally millions of people, taken all of their drive and ambition and independence academically and replaced it with this sort of subservience that says, I need to be forced to do something in order to do it. So the first part that we have to deal with is the deception part. And that's a hard thing to deal with because it's so internal and it's so confusing. And what I always recommend to people is just do a one-semester challenge. I mean, it's one semester outside of college, and during that semester, put your foot on the accelerator. I mean, don't. It's not like a one semester of watching TV at home all day. One semester of think of like a business or something like that, or research something on your own. Just do whatever you can on your own. See what you can get done on your own. The second thing that you can do in that same thing is during that one semester, you can actually spend the amount that you would have spent and get one-on-one tutoring from the professors here at this university and literally have them teach you whatever course you want individually. Like, instead of in like a huge classroom, like one-on-one. And I think most people would agree that doing something that's one-on-one for a lower cost is going to be inherently better than doing something that is in a gigantic classroom at a much higher cost. I mean, maybe there's some reason that somebody might disagree with that, but aside from the degree value, the education is always better when it's just you and the professor. But the really much more important thing that we need to deal with is not really the deception part, it's the coercion part, it's the forced part. Right now, even if every single one of you guys drop out of college, never come back, you all start your own businesses, you become massively successful like Bill Gates, like Peter Thiel, like Mark Zuckerberg, even in those circumstances, you still have to pay. Because, as I mentioned earlier today, tax money is being used either to subsidize loans or to create grants. Tax money is being used to allow the price of colleges to go sky high. It's gone, I mean, it's allowed the price of college to increase at literally 3 times the rate of inflation, to go up faster than medical costs. And while at the same time, all the expensive parts of college, like computers and whatnot, their cost is actually going down. So despite that, the college cost is skyrocketing. So now the real question, and this is the real focus of this whole thing, and this I want to talk about during the next part where we're going to play this game, the real focus has to be on the other side of it. Has to be on the forced part of it. The steps that we need to take is to bring into the national consciousness the very idea that, and this is going to be like, this is the thing that people are scared to mention, though we all know it has to be talked about, is ending all government involvement in college tuition. Think about that for a second. Think about what we would have if there was no kind of law, no loans, no grants, nothing. On one side, it's going to become the relative price difference might be greater, because if the price goes down, then there's going to be some people who are going to find it very easy to go to college. But let's think about this. Suppose that college was, if there's no loans, if colleges had no possible way to get, get everybody to pay $55,000 or whatever it is you guys pay. If there were no loans of any kind, their only choice of some colleges somewhere would be to lower the price. We'd be reintroducing price competition. And suppose that the price is driven down to $9,000 a year. Well, if the price was $9,000 a year, the maximum possible debt that a person could possibly graduate with is going to be $36,000 a year. Now, right now, with all the aid that we have, with all the loans, with all the assistance, plenty of people graduate with a lot more than $36,000 in debt. So, although the argument you always hear is that it's going to be much harder for the poor. I don't think that's at all true. That's simply false, because right now the cure that we have for the disease that we have is that some people have more money than others. We're not going to change that anytime soon. But the cure we have has made it worse for the poorest Americans or the poorest people from any country worse now than it would have been if there had been no aid of any kind. The prices we have right now are entirely this high because they can be. And the only reason they can be is because of the massive government aid and incentives to drive up the price. Before I play the game, I want to close with a story that comes from an article by Thomas Sowell. This story is about budget politics, and it's a thought experiment. And he says, imagine that you had a government agency that had exactly 2 jobs, and it had to spend half of its budget on each of these things. And one of the things that it had to do was put up statues of Benedict Arnold all over the country. And the other thing it had to do was give life-saving medicines to children. And suppose it was faced with a 50% reduction in budget. What would it do? And he says that the answer is it would obviously just entirely cut the medicine part, because it wants to make the entire world see how bad it is when they receive those budget cuts. Now, the situation we have right now with colleges is untenable. One way or other is going to collapse. It'll either collapse through a bubble, the way the housing bubble did, where too many people can't pay back their loans, or it's going to collapse and people just say, screw it. Like if, right now it's 65,000, when it becomes 165,000, at that point, a lot of people are going to be like, this is just ridiculous, I'm not doing that. So one way or other, it's going to go away. If colleges face those kind of budget cuts, I can absolutely guarantee you they will use those budget cuts to cut back whatever is most visible and whatever is most necessary. Visible things will be like just basic maintenance of like grounds, like in the front. They'll try to make that look as bad as possible, kind of like President Obama did with the White House tours. Shutting down the White House tours to look how bad things are. We can't even have these White House tours, which cost, I don't know, like $15 a year or something like that. So that's the first thing they'll do. But the second thing they'll do is they're going to try, and they'll only try this for maybe 2 or 3 years, and this is going to be like a brinksmanship type of thing. It's going to be kind of like playing chicken. What they're going to say is, fine, we have no choice but to cut like our freshmen writing, biology, chemistry, blah, blah, blah. I say, like, fine, let them do that, because here's the thing, some colleges won't. One college somewhere won't. Probably won't be a very famous college. But after all is said and done, it will probably become a very famous college, because it'll be the one college in the country that isn't playing those games.